this vision literally over a year ago. And for a variety of reasons, we had difficulty getting it done. But I said, listen, you can bring everything down. You can make it easier on yourself if, in fact, you just put it in one of the parks. And they missed the point. Yeah. We were trying to showcase Linden. We said, no, we're going right down Cleveland Avenue.
Today was an absolute labor of love. So many different organizations, so many different groups, so many different people coming together. It's really about one Linden, celebrating our differences, our similarities, and spending time fellowshipping. This was an amazing experience, and we are so proud to be part of it. We love this community with our whole heart, and we can't wait to come back next year and do it bigger and better. We fed the community, we danced, we played basketball, we shared information. It was a great day. And I'm appreciative to all of the community who showed up and had a good time and shared the love.
Put this together.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday. That was the 2019 Linden Festival. And many of you from the New Salem family and the Linden community remember June 2019 when we celebrated the Linden community and had this wonderful festival. And then the pandemic hit. And with a lot of businesses and services and schools alike were shutting down, the Community of Caring Development Foundation was actually ramping up. We weren't able to have another festival the next year, but the foundation served the community in ways that were really needed, like food and rent assistance and COVID-19 testing, vaccinations, and more. So hello, I'm Carla Coleman. I'm your host tonight. I'm the Director of Communications for New Salem Baptist Church in Columbus, Ohio. And tonight we have a special and rare occasion because the brother behind the scenes, he moves like a blur through the community and it's hard to stop him. That's Brother Adam Troy. He's the Chief Engagement Officer for the Community of Caring Development Foundation. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you for having me, Sister Carla. And listen, before you go on, I got to tell you, we got to give a shout out to Sterling Carter. He blew that video up, man. It was a nice job. So kudos to Sterling.
Absolutely, absolutely. And looking back on it, it's been two years now. It's like, wow, that thing is so relevant. It's still relevant. He did a wonderful job. We're blessed to have you. Just take a second, to sit with you and talk about, the volunteer work that's going on behind the scenes of the church wall and the Linden community and what the community, the foundation is doing. So glad to have you on tonight.
Again, thank you for the opportunity, and let's get to it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself first, because that's what we normally do, and then we're going to jump into just what the foundation is and how it's grown and some of the good things that you're doing and how people can get involved.
I got you. Well, for those I haven't had the opportunity certainly to meet it in person, I'm the grandson of a day worker who didn't finish the 6th grade. My grandfather was also worked on construction. Many people may also know of my father, who is the retired pastor, Reverend Leon L. Troy, and I am the middle son of the pack. Everybody knows of the four, but there was actually five of us. We had a younger brother named Jay Scott, who unfortunately didn't live much beyond his birth. So, but that placed me smack dab in the middle. I am happily married, going on 32 years now, to Victoria George. We have two children, one on the East Coast and one who just recently moved back here with us. And mom and dad are absolutely ecstatic to have her here with us. So, and as you know, I will do hats at New Salem. I have the pleasure of overseeing New Salem's missions department, where I get a chance to work with an outstanding team of colleagues throughout the church, and then obviously serving as the CEO of the Development Corporation. So again, happy to be here tonight.
Excellent. Well, so glad to have you. So let's get started. I think first of all, I think people need to really get a clear understanding of how the foundation works and what it does, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges you've had in the last year and a half. So you want
Sure,
to bring up the
absolutely.
PowerPoint?
Yeah, let's go up to the first slide if we can show that. Next slide.
Okay.
You know what? Let's stay there for a minute. If we can go back to that first slide, because certainly, Carla, what we want to encourage people to do. The beautiful thing about tonight is that everything pretty much you're going to hear us talk about is our website. The CDC has its own separate website, and you can find it by going to callingallconnectors.org. Again, callingallconnectors.org. The other reason I wanted to stay right here is because when you get on the website, we won't spend a lot of time there, but the explanation, the logo is there. And Carla, as you can remember, we spent a lot of time with that, so I'm pretty proud of what we were able to come up with. But you can find out all of our information on the Community of Caring website. Next slide. Who we are and what we do. In the time that we have, that's probably where we're going to spend, imagine, the bulk of our time. And probably like me, you get a lot of questions about who is New Salem's Community of Development Caring Foundation, and what do we do exactly? So we've tried to truncate that into the next slide, if we can go to that one. At its core, New Salem of Caring Development Corporation, and in the industry, you will hear people use the term CDC. If it's not connected to which, that essentially stands for Community Development Corporation. Typically, when it's connected to a church, it's called the Church Development Corporation, but just know that those terms are interchangeable. You'll see the CDC in reference to both. For those that may not know, the CDC is a 501c3 nonprofit. It represents the development, community development, and economic arm of New Salem Baptist Church. Our charge, quite frankly, is to take New Salem's message in the context of why we're here tonight, of health and hope, beyond the walls. We're located inside the church at 2956 Cleveland Avenue in Columbus, Ohio. And again, you see the reference to the website, which is callingallconnectors.org. Next slide. Our mission is simple in terms of what we do. We create a connected community. And people find that a bit strange. What most people don't know is that, look, New Salem has close to almost 70 something ministries inside of it already. There are also a similar number of programs that are pretty dope going on outside the walls of the outside the walls of the church, that a lot of really strong and professional people are also running. And so we didn't really see the need to overlap by creating a bunch of new programs, if you will. What we have found, certainly inside the walls of New Salem and outside the walls of New Salem, is we have very, very strong relationship cachet. And what many of our colleagues inside the Linden community did not have was those relationships that could connect up their ideas and their resources and their target audiences to the types of relationships we did have. And so we essentially became a convener, a trusted advisor who, as the church, was positioned to truth to power to City Hall, but also truth to power to the community. And so our mission essentially became creating a connected community. We sincerely feel that if interest is inextricably tied to one another, you're going to care about what happens to me and vice versa. And as we often say, those on the west side of Cleveland Avenue are going to care about what happens on the east side of Cleveland Avenue. Those in North Linden will care about what happens in South Linden. We have 4 primary areas of focus: community wealth building, which incorporates a number of the programs that we do throughout the year. We have an education focus, and many people know that we've adopted several schools inside of Linden. Affordable housing is a big piece for us. Most people are not aware of the fact that under our pastor's leadership, New Salem has been in the community development game long before it was popular. In fact, almost 30 years now. And so particularly for those that live in around the Easton area or drive that corridor, New Salem's footprint runs from the development of Easton. We were consultants on that project, to the Giant Eagle that sits at the corner of McCutcheon and Stelzer, to the CVS, to the MI Home development, to the 60 plus acres, half of which we just sold to a developer. And you come down the street to Agler and you make that right turn, literally over $100 million worth of development New Salem's footprint sits on. To date, we've housed nearly almost 3,000 families, Carla, now that I'm thinking about it, which is pretty phenomenal. So real estate and affordable housing is an area that we've always been intimately involved with. And then health and wellness. And I'm sure we're going to talk about, certainly what the pandemic forced us to begin to look at was the overall health and wellness of the community. And we were able to get our arms around that with respect to our focus on food scarcity, school supplies, providing clothing, et cetera, and so forth. So those are our 4 core areas: community wealth building, education, affordable housing, real estate, which also incorporates health and wellness. Next slide. Carla, you mentioned, our world really, as you know, is pretty much a blur, but we want to make sure people don't think that we're flying by the seat of our pants. So the Development Corporation does have an official board, which is comprised of 10 members. 60 to 70% of that board are New Salem members. The remaining 30 to 40% are outside of New Salem. And then we also support that board with an advisory group of another 10 to 12 persons who are not officially on the board, but we get the benefit of their expertise and their relationships. And 2 years ago, a little over a year ago, we created the strategic plan on a page. And I won't spend a lot of time on it, but again, Carla, for anybody, any of our members, anybody who's watching, if they want us to send them a copy of this, we would be more than happy to do that. It's made up essentially of 6 sections. You can see, in fact, right there, the middle box, section 2, we just talked about with our mission statement of creating a connected community. Core assumptions, which are very important. We cover what we're looking, what we assume in the market strategically, operationally, as well as financially. And then our vision, where we stood currently, or at least at that particular point in time, where we were headed, and our plans on how to get there. I'm going to come back to, let's hit that next box, which is essentially the intersection of the sacred and the secular. That's where you will see the cross. For those on the outside looking in, when people often ask us, what is the difference between a church development corporation versus the work or the overall construct of an NAACP or an Urban League or a United Way, which all have phenomenal programs. We've partnered with many of them. But that cross intersection, particularly the vertical plane, is what separates us from everybody else. And I'm sure we're going to spend a little time talking about it, but very quickly, what happens on the horizontal plane is where we work to meet access to the daily needs of our constituency. So it's there where you'll find access to education, to healthcare, to affordable housing, to employment. Oftentimes, we meet persons there who will never, ever step foot inside of 2956 Cleveland Avenue. But what keeps us grounded is that vertical plane. Everybody who is connected to the Development Corporation understands that ultimately we're working to get people from the margins or from the fringes to the center section. Once you get to the center section, then what we do on a Sunday morning essentially takes over. And for us, that's the sweet spot. That represents one's relationship to the deity. The horizontal plane represents our relationship to mankind. Box number 4 talks about how we do this. What is our approach? And I think we've got a slide. I'll come back to that, so we don't need to show it just yet. But people often wonder, Carla, how we are structured. In that box number 5, you'll see the CDC indicated there in the middle as a separate 501c3. What does not show there is that we could draw a dotted line on top of that box to New Salem Missionary Baptist Church. The church is the sole legal member of the Development Corporation. What does that essentially mean? That means that if the Development Corporation got, quote unquote, as the old folks used to say, outside itself, the church could literally call a church meeting and vote to shut the Development Corporation down. Ultimately, the church controls whether or not that Development Corporation lives or dies in that sense. So no one has to worry about ever the tail wagging the dog in that relationship, because the church is the sole legal member. The right side of that flow chart is an indication of essentially where potential resources and money comes from. It highlights government partners, it highlights corporate relationships, and then the left side is essentially where the community plugs in. The reason the CDC sits in the middle is because we're the trusted partner on both sides. And you heard me earlier reference the fact that we are positioned to speak truth to power, to downtown, as well as to the community as well. That bottom box there, again, is just a reiteration of the program models that we talked about earlier. It's community wealth building, it's education, it's real estate, it's health and wellness. So gives you just a general overview of our plan on the page. And again, Carl, as you know, section 6, we have a working board, y'all. Our board doesn't just come around and pontificate. If you're on our board, you're going to be working, and that section 6 talks about what their board's action plan was prior to COVID. And hopefully we can get back to that sometime soon. Next slide. Yeah, here's where we, again, how we do what we do. At that intersection of sacred and secular is where we create a connected community. So you can see where we folded in our mission statement. That just simply means, what is our charge every day we wake up? When we wake up, if you're connected to the CDC, your charge is to create a connected community. And always remember that our sweet spot is at that intersection of sacred and secular. So when people ask, who are we, what do we do? We're connectors. And in large part, excuse me, we would argue that Jesus's X factor was his ability to connect. Whether you rejected him or accepted him, the X factor for our Savior was his ability to connect. And so we've really tried to stay with that mantra. And Carl, as you know, we're building, in fact, New Salem's, I think, new theme around leading a connected life. So super excited about that as well. Next slide. People want to know how we do what we do. For those that have been around New Salem for a long time, you remember New Salem's motto was always the church that cares. And so we just began to break that care model down. And the first C stands for connection. And the goal is really to connect without judgment. I watched our First Lady on one occasion greet somebody in the foyer of our church who was clearly not a church person. And she spent time with that person. She never admonished them about coming to Sunday school, about what time church started, about all of our programming, right? She literally got her arms around that person in the foyer. and was able to bring value, if you will, without any sense of judgment. And so for us, it's important for us to connect without judging. And once we connect, we need to affirm the value of each person, irrespective of where we come from. Oftentimes, you'll hear me talk about blue collar, white collar, no collar. Doesn't matter to us. It is an affirmation of that person's personhood. And in respect, um, Pastor often reminds us that, look, if you're in a room where you're the smartest cat in the room, then you need to be in a different room. And so the point being is that we respect viewpoints, all viewpoints, but we're very solid on what it is that we're supposed to be doing with our resources and our relationships and within the context of our mission statement. And then ultimately, man, none of that means anything if we can't use the resources and our relationships to create an environment where people, again, who would never step foot inside of New Salem can become empowered to become the primary actors in their own lives. This is not about us as through the CDC stepping to them saying, here's the 12-point plan to becoming a citizen, a holistic person, right? Our job is to create an environment where people can make informed decisions about maximizing their own human potential. So that's essentially our care model. Next slide. The pandemic pivot. Carly, you did a good job of putting out, you know I would never remember all of this stuff, right? So the pandemic pivot, man, was not unlike for the church. I mean, it was super challenging for us. But the great thing is that we had already begun to build a brand of trust beyond the walls of New Salem. And so when the pandemic hit, again, as many knows, particularly those of you who are probably working the food pantry right now, and listen, y'all can work the food pantry and still watch Wellness Wednesday. So I hope y'all haven't stopped working the food pantry. I'm gonna be over there between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, just to check on y'all. But we have not stopped since the beginning of the pandemic. Every Wednesday and every Friday, we have a committed group of volunteers who are there. What the pandemic, by way of example, forced us to do, as many of you know, because New Salem has always been a very caring church. And we would invite our clients inside the missions house where we could sit and talk to them and get our arms around what their needs were beyond food. With the pandemic, we had to essentially create a new model within 2 weeks. And so if you come over to the food pantry tonight or on Friday, you will see folks pulling up in cars. They stay inside the cars. We have a number that's given to them. They call inside and talk to Miss Tony. She takes down all the information. We have runners that package up the food and essentially bring it out to the car. We also have from time to time prayer warriors because people often ask for prayer while they're there. But it gives you just an example of how we had to make a shift with respect to the pandemic. Not unlike many other churches or CDCs, again, Carl, as you know, because on some of these committees we serve on together, particularly with respect to the 614 initiative, we were holding community collaborations by Zoom every 30 days, which kept everybody connected to the work of the church and the work of the community. So very proud in terms of how we were able to pivot in the pandemic as well. Next slide. Yeah, we are very fond of saying if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And so we wanted to go back and begin to look at the impact of our movement. And oftentimes what happens, not just with organizations like the CDC, but for those of us who also run small businesses, sometimes, man, you are so busy working in the business, you don't have a chance to work on it. Working on it means you have to step back and really look at the numbers to make sure that you're having an impact. And so we took a snapshot during the pandemic from the month of March through November. Phenomenal numbers, actually. Over that period of time, 33,784 individuals got served. Here's what was mind-blowing. 9 different zip codes. There's only like 5 zip codes inside of Linden. So what that told us is that due to New Salem's reputation and the work that we were doing in the health and hope space, people were spreading word about our goods and services. And so we ended up serving over 40 something plus zip codes. You follow that top line. We struck up new partnerships, 30 plus corporate and nonprofit community partners came to work alongside of us. We were one of four organizations across the city that garnered more than $250,000 in grants. Our number happened to be around 375,000. That money did not stay inside the CDC, but I'm proud to say we were able to work through almost 20 plus kind of what we call secondary organizations and put money on the street to help people, again, who were always doing good work, but just may not have the same level of infrastructure. During that same period of time, we gave away 60 bikes. Many people know that's one of our North Star events where every year we provide brand new bicycles to each of those fifth graders. And so during that period of time, we were able to give away 60 bikes. 200 plus school supplies, and thank you to all of you who may be listening and contributed to that effort. Also in the affordable housing space, for those of you that have been over to the church or by the church over the past several months, you will notice that the brand new Kinlan project is rising out of the ground. 45 brand new units, and that became our contribution to the affordable housing needs in the Linden community. Carl, I'm happy to say that that potential project is the largest project, will be the largest project in Linden for the past 20 years. Now there's one coming shortly behind us, which is actually being led by two of our members, quite frankly. So, inside of Linden, man, New Salem is getting it done. But that project will have 100 units and focused on senior living. So super excited about that one as well. Souls to the polls. We've always been a church that is politically active, civic minded, and so we organized inside of the of New Salem and outside of New Salem with a number of our partners to make sure that people got to the polls to vote. In that period of time, over 200 volunteers committed to our work. A number of them, again, came from outside the church as well, which I think speaks to New Salem serving as a trusted partner in that space. Over 2,000 food boxes were delivered. And as many people know who are probably watching this, every 90 days, in fact, this was part of our Health and Hope initiative, but we committed over a 90-day period of time that every 30 days, essentially, we would put on COVID tests. We would give a COVID testing stations. We would provide access to fresh food and produce and information to keep the community involved. And so, again, this is what we look like by the numbers, working beyond the walls. Next slide. This was a snapshot of June 2020, which was off the charts. We ended up partnering, in fact, I want to say with the Columbus Urban League during that June month. But our numbers were through the roof. We had a 225% increase in the number of people we were serving. And what was interesting is that people were coming from all over. People who thought they would never need the services of the food pantry, we found to be in line. 67% of that group were seniors. And so many of our seniors got hit extremely hard during that period of time. And you can see there to the left in terms of the weekly breakdown, the number of households that were served. And here's the baseline, Carla. Prior to COVID, we probably saw maybe 100 clients a month. And so this gives you some idea of what the impact of COVID did. And again, I'm proud to say how New Salem was able through the CDC to respond. Next slide. Health and Hope. This was a big deal. We have as one of the ministries inside of New Salem that functions both as an extension of admissions department as well as the CDC called SOS, which stands for Saints on the Streets. Our pastor laid out a charge for us to get our arms around what we now call the Golden Triangle. For those that don't know, the Golden Triangle incorporates the 6 or 7 blocks around New Salem. There are roughly 200 families inside of the Golden Triangle. And what we wanted to be sure of, with strong input from a number of our leaders who are connected to SOS, is that we did not forget about those families inside the Golden Triangle. And so we came up with this moniker of the church providing both help and hope, again, which separated us from everybody else who was out there basically focused on health. Not that that was a bad thing, but we wanted to be sure that we were bringing to bear our focus on that intersection of sacred and secular. And so we were able to bring together a number of volunteers. That Linden Strong, hashtag Linden Strong moniker stuck. You'll see t-shirts now throughout Linden with that moniker on it. Had I been thinking, we probably should have trademarked that, Carl. I wasn't thinking very smart about that.
Probably.
But, you know, proud to certainly give it away. And the Health and Hope Initiative, we continue to build upon that. It became almost an evergreen sort of statement. And so pretty much everything we do in the health and wellness space falls within the construct of our Health and Hope Initiative. We should also mention, because I know there are those who are probably watching who are on our SOS, inside of our SOS ministry. SOS, you guys, runs on kind of what we call the S curve. The first S is to make sure, and again, this ties back to our care model, to make sure people understand we first see them, right? The second S is that we're here to serve, not asking you for anything, but first we see you, and just to know that we're here to serve in whatever capacity we can be helpful. And then the third S is that we sow. What is our level of investment? It could be time, talent, or capital. And so SOS really tries to stay within that framework of seeing, serving, and sowing. Next slide. This begins to get into a number of the programs, again, that can be found on our website at callingallconnectors.org. If you go to the link, I believe, Carla, that says events on it, many of these programs you'll see there. And as I was looking at it the other day, it's easy to forget all the things we've done over the past 24 months, but would certainly encourage all of our viewers, please, ma'am, please, sir, check out the website at callingallconnectors.org, and we'll give you some insight into all of the programs and our various partners who've been involved as well. Next slide. These are pictures of the Health and Hope Initiative. Local Matters provided the bags. Man, we had a ton of volunteers on 2
95.
of those. Yeah, we did. I was sitting here trying to remember the numbers, which was absolutely phenomenal. People, again, came from all over. You can see the amount of produce that was there. You know what picture we should have searched for? There's a picture someplace of Pastor actually driving the truck and loading, you know, which, and the beauty about that was not so much that it was him, but he was working side by side with one of our young adults. I just thought that was like the coolest thing, right? And so being able to load up those bags with the help of 95 volunteers, and we distribute them all throughout the Golden Triangle. There at the bottom left, you can see how the cars lined up on the parking lot, and to the right, how we were also taking the time to get information, but working to do COVID testing at the same time. Next slide. An indication of a few of the initiatives that we have going on in this space. To the right there, those pictures are of the bike giveaway. Our board, for those of you that have been involved with the bike giveaway for the first 2 or 3 years, we did it with East Linden Elementary School. I guess we got real good at it. So the CDC board thought that we should double up and try 2 schools. And so we did. We did it effectively Carla, I'm on pins and needles because I know at any junction, in fact, when we go to this next strategic planning session, we're going to be talking about how we hit literally every uh, element in Linden, which would be 5, and to do a simultaneous bike giveaway. But we have phenomenal partners with Walmart, and certainly many of you who are watching tonight who donated dollars to help us pull this off. The Chess Academy, super, super, super successful. Brother Ernest Levert, under the ROI initiative, we launched this past year. Our goal is to create a Linden Chess Club, and young people came from all around. In the closeout, the mayor was there, and he was quick to say that he got beat a few times by our young people. Our director of neighborhood development was there as well. But the Chess Academy, the Clean Columbus Ambassadors, which is our Linden initiative, the 614 Linden Collaborative, where you have about 6 or 7 other nonprofits that are working in various spaces to make sure that resources are available. Smart Columbus Project, the Sports Leadership Academy, in fact, which is going on now. For those of you that have young people who are 14 and above, every Saturday from 10, beginning now at 10 to 2 o'clock, in partnership with St. Stephen's Community House, we do a Sports Leadership Academy where young people are able to come, both boys and girls. Basketball is the hook, but what they're learning along the way are life skills and life lessons. We also provide lunch, so encouraging anybody who has a young person who's certainly looking for something to do at no cost to you. And I'll let you in on a little secret. There's only 40, maybe 50 slots. And I think starting this Saturday, we're going to start to stipend the young people who are there. So y'all don't tell anybody I told you that. But if you're interested, you should absolutely be there on this coming Saturday. The farmers market. Our Bread of Life Food Pantry, again, which is going on right now, the apprenticeship fair, school mentoring programs, affordable housing projects. And again, this is just a snapshot of some of the programming that the CDC oversees in collaboration with many of our church partners. Next slide. Here's our call to action. There's probably a slide following this because as we are beginning to grow, and let's get to that next slide. We need more bodies. We are being called upon to do more and more. And so right now, as an extension of our SOS initiative, we're looking for people who have an interest or experience with logistics, event planners, marketing and PR. And in fact, if you just love to engage community, this is now's the time for you to connect with me or certainly somebody who's connected to the CDC. As Carla knows, we are ramping up for the second phase of our strategic planning within the CDC at the end of this month. So again, our call to action is if you're out there or if you know of anybody and you're listening, I need persons who have logistics background, event planners, marketing and PR, community engagement coordinators, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide.
I think that's it.
Think that's it? Beautiful.
Yeah,
All right.
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. That was a good summary. And I've been on the advisory board now for over 2 years. So it's been an exciting ride. It really has been. And I think you talked a little bit earlier about the board itself. So you're right. We are working and we're working hard. So
There's never a dull moment at the CDC.
never a dull moment. So I have a few questions, and we have a few questions in the chat as well. People are chiming in here. One of the questions is, what is actually offered at the Mission House, the Bread of Life Pantry? What do you actually distribute?
So I'm smiling because for those that serve as volunteers, right? Look, at the Missions House, at the food pantry, people will say, look, I need to start coming here to shop. Mia Penn, our servant leader, does a phenomenal job of identifying the product. And I'm trying to tell you, we serve anybody and everybody's interest, from those of you that are vegan oriented versus those of you that just like to eat, man. On any given week, we may have ham, turkey, these are whole hams, whole turkeys, shrimp tempura I saw over there the other day. We always bring in every 2 weeks fresh produce, milk and eggs and butter. So it's difficult for me to give you a laundry list because we shop every 2 weeks. And so if you're interested, follow up with myself or certainly with me, a pen. And if there's a need, we will certainly try to meet it. But we have a variety of product, and it's always interesting to see, what comes in.
Absolutely. So, what would you say your biggest challenge as far as the Community of Caring Foundation? What what do you face that and that's what we're working on. When we start
Yeah,
working on the strategic plan coming forward, what are those
yeah,
challenges? What are those opportunities?
yeah. Great question. What's interesting about that is that I think we face the same challenge both inside New Salem and outside of New Salem. And Carla, that's one word. It is relevancy, right? How does our movement and our programming and our impact remain relevant again for somebody who may never step foot inside of New Salem? I had this conversation with Pastor the other day because, as you might imagine, we get a lot of inquiries from our sister churches about how we do what we do. And for those that work inside the Linden community on roll, there's somewhere between 70 to maybe 100 churches inside of Linden proper. That's including storefronts and everybody. And most people don't know, Linden is probably one of the largest neighborhoods, communities in Columbus at almost 3 square miles. And in the course of the pandemic, in a conversation with a brother who was not a churchman, we were talking about the value proposition of the church. And his question to me, Carla, was, if 25 of those 100 churches tomorrow, Brother Troy, it don't impact my life one iota. That was a heck of an indictment. And he was probably right. And what it began to force us to look at is, man, how relevant are we? Or are we just focused insular on our programming and our own sustainability? So relevancy certainly from the outside in, and then relevancy from the inside out. I mean, what we're doing tonight, I think, helps, but many of our parishioners probably don't have a good feel for what it is we do, how we function as really an extension of the church's mission and mandate to impact community, and how the CDC can be helpful with respect to some things that they may be trying to get done downtown or corporately, or just to serve as a good steward for their own family and friends. We have functioned in all of those roles. So I would say to you, our greatest challenge is making sure that the CDC remains relevant, both inside and outside of New Salem. And the last lens always is with corporate, to help them understand, listen, everybody wants to come to the church and have the church do stuff for free. Look, there's lights, there's staff, there's a whole bunch of things that go on inside of New Salem. And so part of the challenge with corporations is helping them understand, listen, we need partners who can help fund a number of the initiatives that we have going on, and not just for our sake, but oftentimes, in fact, most of the time, beyond our own self-interest. So it's, to me, if I got to sum it up in one word, it's relevancy.
Interesting. I didn't see you coming with that word. That's interesting. And then those relationships are so important. I know over the past year that the organization has increased the number of corporations, and even the city of Columbus doing a lot more with the city of Columbus in the Linden area. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and the
Yeah.
importance of that relationship building?
Well, relationships are everything. Our father would often tell us, sons, relationships will get you in the door when you don't have any money. So be sure to take care of your name and take care of the institution. And so it's those relationships, again, whether it's downtown or in the community, that have provided access to us. Sister Bruton and I were at the church last night along with other staff. We were in our offices, and for those that were there, you could absolutely hear the music in the neighborhood from across the parking lot. And our neighbor was jamming. The bass beat was booming, but it was very hard to concentrate and get work done. And so I just went over and had a conversation, and turned the music down without any fuss, and was very apologetic. That's having relationship cachet. Um, those relationships are also key in terms of our members who are sitting in C suites. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you should be thinking about the development corporation as a tool to advance your impact inside of your corporations. When those corporations are looking for money to place or partners to work with, for those who are members, one of the first entities out of your mouth should be raising your hand, and you should be talking about our community development corporation. That's relationship oriented. And so we've become, I would like to say, I think, a trusted partner with City Hall. As I mentioned early on, we've received now more than $500,000 coming into the latter part of this year with trusted money from City Hall to make sure that we get out on the street and it impacts the folks who need to be served. And they don't do that just because, New Salem is big and we have influential people who might go there, right? It's about the relationships and impact. So relationships, as you've heard me say, are like the handlebars on a bike. You got to reach out to make them work. And so we've gotten pretty good at that.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. And this past year, been able to put a good amount of money back on the street. I mean, you talked about that for a second. Talk a little bit more about some of those programs, where the cleanup program and employment programs that you've been able to do.
Yeah, the beauty about that, there were four of us that covered each side of town, northeast, south, and west. And we happened to be one of those primary organizations that were entrusted with CARES Act dollars to the tune of 200,000. Again, not to keep for ourselves, but to serve as the primary fiduciary, as they say, who is the trusted partner that the government will hand money over to make sure that it gets to programs who may not have had the infrastructure or the relationships with City Hall or the federal government, but who each of us knew were doing good work. And so I'm proud to say that we funded more than 15 grassroots organizations, which was phenomenal. We helped them, and each of them could receive a max of $25,000. Some were less than that, but everybody performed. Um, there were organizations, certainly led by people who look like us. There were
Mm-hmm.
organizations from our non-black brothers and sisters whose constituency looked like us, and everybody
Mm-hmm.
came to the table. We had top documentation. I am very confident that if there was ever an audit, we would absolutely pass that. And here's the beauty of it: two of the organizations that we were able to seed are now the top grant receivers, even more so than us, inside of Linden now, because they were
Nice.
able to build infrastructure and demonstrate programmatically what they were able to do. And as you mentioned, some of that was the cleanup initiative. The Chess Academy came from that as well. Brother Gino Tucker over with Urban Scouts was able to launch a lawn care program. He has now expanded into hair braiding, which is taken off, as you can imagine, like nobody's business. Brother Ralph Carter over at We Are Linden has become literally the brand of Linden. And our relationship, obviously, with St. Stephen's continues to get strong as they help us oversee the Sports Leadership Academy. And there were several others, but those grants, that empowerment grant piece and the relationships that we had allowed us to put money on the street. And Carl, I should mention, this all had to happen inside of 3 weeks to ramp up to
Yeah,
get it done. And so we put together a really solid team and were able to get it done.
excellent. And speaking of the team, talk a little bit about who's on your board.
You've got, Giovanni Lucas, who most people would know through praise and worship. Yes, he has a phenomenal voice. He is also a heck of a leader. Carol Perkins serves as our vice chair of that board, who brings significant board expertise. She worked at CODA for a number of years, and many will remember that Carol also served on our Board of Education. The beauty about Carol as well is that she lives in Linden and has been there for 30 something years. So she brings a tremendous amount of cachet and credibility to what we say needs to happen inside of Linden because she has been there. You also have persons like Landon Adams, who we call the bishop, who serves as the secretary. He was on the board from day one, who also oversees many of our agriculture-related programs, particularly the farmers market. Brother Timothy Parker, who serves as our treasurer, who does a phenomenal job. Then you've got the sister who we call Superwoman, that's Kim Avery. Kim Avery is doing, I think she's pursuing her PhD at this time. She heads up our educational initiative. There's also Rhonda Burke, who many of you may not know. She's not a member of the church, but she is the mom of NBA star Trey Burke. And so she brings that sort of flavor and relevancy. And Rhonda has HR background. Most people don't know that. And so she brings that skill set and expertise to us as well. We haven't forgot about the youth movement. Tiffany Davis serves on that board as well. And so between her and people like Jasmine Ayers, who, as you know, serves on the advisory council, they make sure that our movement is certainly takes into consideration the lens of that 40 and under, if you will. Sister Barbara Nicholson was kind enough to help bring credibility and get us out the gate initially. And so again, just in terms of establishing a ground game relationships inside of the arts community and with potential funders, she lent her name to our initial board. And then Brother Ron Stewart, who I had the opportunity almost 20 something years ago to work alongside of in our initial iteration of the CDC. Many people may remember Ron, actually, many people probably don't know. But it was Ron Stewart, you guys, who ran the construction platform for Pizzuti, one of our main developers here in the city. Happy that he was able to chart his own course. He is now a partner in a black development firm that focuses on affordable housing, headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I told him he still had to be on the board, regardless of the activity he's got going on. But those were our 10 core members. And truth be told, Carla, when Pastor Troy and I assembled this group, we were only looking for 5 people. We didn't anticipate everybody that we were going to ask was going to say yes. They did, and they've been rolling with us for the past 3 to 4 years.
That's amazing. And that's the beauty of it too.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, we do have an advisory council. These are not official board members, but they bring a certain level of expertise, of which Carla, you serve on. Jasmine Ayers, Carla Gwynn, who many of you know, if you're doing taxes and accounting in Linden, she's been there for 18 years. She's the person, in fact, we call the tax lady. But Carla Gwynn brings her expertise to the table. Gamal Harding, who I always tease about being the unknown real estate Mongol, is doing a phenomenal job in terms of leading our real estate initiatives. Donna Hitcho and I work very close together. Donna Hitcho has actually sat in this seat for the Greater Linden Development Corporation. So having her on board as a partner in that regard has been great. She also leads our SOS initiative. Shally Pittman, Ernika Pitts, Rick Studer, and Donald Waits, who's actually a member of our trustee board, but serves as the liaison between the trustees and the CDC. So we got a strong team, man. We do.
Absolutely. Have another question from the chat. Can you talk about your commitment to mentoring young leaders?
I can only guess who that might have come from. They ask me every week. Let me first of all say we are absolutely committed to it, and it's absolutely needed. And how it essentially came about, I'm a firm believer that you have to start where you are. And so in terms of a compassionate critique, the generation, Carla, that came before us, this is just one man's opinion, I don't think did the best job of shepherding the way for us. Literally, if you wound up in a seat of power, so to speak, you had to take the ball from the bear's mouth. People were not there to smooth out wrinkles, to open up doors, to make sure we sat in board meetings, to understand the language, to see how the sausage gets made. I didn't want to be that guy. And so I've tried to be very deliberate about creating space and time for a core group of about 5 or 6 young professionals in that space in Linden who are doing phenomenal work on their own. Their challenge to me was to formalize that process, to bring my peer group and colleagues alongside of what we were doing so that we could essentially begin to spread the wealth and sit in a room again with no judgment, but hear from that demographic that's coming behind us. Here's what's important, here's what's needed, but to also give them the benefit certainly of our mistakes, but to begin to pave the way for them, because they shouldn't have to pay the same level of dues that we had to pay, and they won't always do it the same way that we do it. But
No.
understand, I'm 110% committed to it. We just need to find time and space to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's hugely important, especially since we keep seeing the same things come around and around from a social justice perspective. And,
Yeah.
and you're in that space as well. It's not listed among our focus areas, but we're definitely a part of that. And you want to talk about some of the initiatives that we actually, the Community Caring Foundation actually initiated this past year?
Yeah. Often the team takes on the personality of the coach. And so our pastor is not necessarily that guy who you're going to see out in the public pulpit talking about the injustices. He certainly realizes that that's important. But what most people don't understand is that he's always been that cat in the room, meeting with the powers to be, not just to pontificate, but to get action done. So a lot of things that happen on the street happen as a result of those discussions in backdoor meetings. I'm often very fond of saying that, you got to have the pen and the sword. The sword is what people see on the street. The pen is what makes stuff stick. And so shortly after the George Floyd situation, we quietly formed what we call the Social Justice Empowerment Council, which was made up of about 14 persons. It's led by Landon Adams and Jocelyn Armstrong. You also have folks who participate in that, like our director of youth ministries, Brother Ani, Jasmine Ayers, of course. And so people like that came quietly behind our initiatives and began to focus in on some of the public policy writings that needed to happen. We were challenging legislators. And if and when we needed to be out front at a march to participate or to provide snacks, water, or some level of infrastructure, we were absolutely there to do that. And some may remember one of the initiatives that came out of that, Carl, as you might recall, was the Prosecutors Forum, where we partnered with the OCC to put that on virtually. And most people at that time did not give Attorney Tyack, I think, a snowball's chance of winning against the incumbent. The incumbent had been in that slot for almost 30-something years. And I think I can say without fear of contradiction that we were the only group that put that sort of forum on. It got a lot of good response. And he went on to now become the new prosecutor. So those are the types of things I'm very proud of that came out of the social justice component, as well as our Souls to the Polls piece. We have a block party at the Souls to the Polls. So if you come up there, the CDC is going to have a tent. We're going to have food. We're going to have music. We're going to make sure people have a good time and certainly vote.
Excellent, excellent. Wow, so much have happened in the last 2 years, and the foundation has grown a lot of fingers and things going on at the same time. I knew we were going to go long tonight. I think I told you that ahead of time, so I told you
Yeah,
not to schedule anything else because I know you're
you
a
did.
blur and
You
you're on
did.
to the next thing. I did tell you, so I did want to give you an opportunity to wrap things up for us. Just some final closing remarks, and thanks again for being here.
Again, certainly appreciate the opportunity. I'm thankful again for the sort of leadership that we have certainly on our board, both boards really. I think our CDC board, when it certainly has the opportunity, works hand in glove with our trustee board. We certainly don't take for granted being affiliated with a church whose pastor and the first lady and others create space for us to be able to, as we often say, literally take the church to the edge, but all in the interest of remaining relevant. And I would just simply say to those who are tuning in tonight, get connected. What we do inside the CDC is not a spectator sport. Trust you me, we have more than enough work for folks to do. And at some point in time, you got to be about it and stop talking about it. I'm very fond of saying this is a time in the church's evolution for workhorses, not show ponies. And so, if you're interested in putting axe to the grind, you've got logistics background, you've got some PR, some marketing. Well, look, you just have a heart to serve. We're open and ready for business, and we need you working alongside of us. And more importantly, the community needs you as well. And certainly the church will be better served for having new and fresh blood come alongside of us. But it's been a great ride for the past 4 years, and certainly looking forward to what the future is going to bring.
So, if someone would like to volunteer, what should they do?
Call me. They can go to callingallconnectors.org. In fact, there is a volunteer link on that site. So if you go to callingallconnectors.org, you'll see a link in the top band that says volunteer. Put your information. It comes directly to our team, and we'll follow up with you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I know you need to get over to the food pantry. They're waiting for
That's
you.
right. That's right. That's absolutely right. My crew is over
Although
there
they're not
working. They're blowing
waiting,
up my phone.
they're over
They're
there
working.
working. That's right.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Adam, for joining us tonight. I appreciate it again. Everyone, if you have any more information, you can go to www.callingallconnectors.org. And again, we're glad to have you. Thank you all for joining. Have a good night. And as I always say, stay safe and stay healthy. Good night, everyone.